Groom of the Stool was a role created during the reign of Henry VIII to monitor and assist in the king's bowel movements. The word stool was in reference to a portable commode which would have been carried around at all times, along with water, towels, and a wash bowl. To ensure he was carrying out his job at peak efficiency, the groom of the stool would also have closely monitored the king's diet and meal times and would have organized his day around the king's predicted motions. The groom of the stool was the highest position available in the king's privy chamber. The king's world consisted of the inner and outer chambers. The inner chamber also being known as the privy chamber. These chambers were a series of rooms which included the king's bedroom and waste closet. It was to these rooms that the king would retire to sleep, read, and socialize in private. The role first appeared under the rule of King Henry VII when he created the Privy Chamber in around 1495. At this time, the role was considered to be simply attending to the king's personal needs. However, under the rule of King Henry VIII, the position expanded greatly. While initially the groom of the stool was responsible for attending to the king's toileting needs, his duties and responsibilities expanded over time. During King Henry VIII's reign, the groom of the stool also became responsible for governing the men that tended the king in his privy chambers. He was also responsible for assisting the monarch in dressing and undressing, keeping track of the expenditures of the privy purse, ensuring the safety of the items within the privy chamber such as the king's jewel and plate, and dictating who was and was not allowed to have access to the king in his personal chambers. The groom of the stool also took on the position of the king's private secretary. Sir Anthony Denny, the king's last groom of the stool, was also given the great responsibility of caring for the king's dry stamp. This stamp was used to sign the king's name to documents, so it's very important because you could authorize and make something official through those stamps. The groom of the stool naturally was granted lodgings wherever the king chose to reside, and he was also given the king's old clothes and furnishings. Again, while second-hand clothing might not seem that prestigious of a gift, keep in mind that the king's clothing was always made of the finest materials, silks and furs. They were extremely expensive and would have been lavish items for the groom of the stool to own. But all in all, the groom of the stool was probably the most intimate of an English monarch's courtiers, responsible for assisting the king in excretion and hygiene. However, the office was exclusively one serving male monarchs, so it was always a man doing it. So on the accession of Elizabeth I of England in 1558, it was replaced by the First Lady of the Bedchamber, first held by Cat Ashley. The role of the groom of the stool, it did carry on all the way until 1901, amazingly until 1901, when King Edward VIII decided to abolish it.